Ooh, yes. Team Associated Reflex 14R, the Hoonigan edition. This is a 14th scale, all-wheel drive RC. It is brushed. We'll get it out of the box and we'll see what it's all about. Breaking that seal. Let's see if we got this right. Oh, yes, we did. Yes, we did. Let's go over some of the bits that we got here. Looks like we got a spur gear, skid plate, some body mounts, and some other plastic bits in here, but for the most part, parts bag, your owner's manual, some stickers, some servo horns. Yeah, that looks about it. Before I jump into the RC, I'm gonna give you guys some other close-up shots of this, but it looks like we got a nice little garage. We know how Team Associate likes to do their garages, and definitely there's a garage on this one. I'll show you some close-up shots of it so you guys get a better look of it. We have the XP120, very functional controller. We'll see how it performs with this. With the slower cars, I don't tend to really have a concern with it, but when you start talking about 3S capabilities, responsiveness is not quite there. But for these slower brush vehicles, I've never had a problem with these controllers. It takes 4 AA's down below. It is a 2-channel controller, so you got the steering and the throttle. And then you have your trim settings up here, which is your reverse switches for your steering and your throttle. You have your dual rates for your steering and your throttle, and then you have your throttle and steering trims as well. On-off switch over here on the rear. And then you have the owner's manual that also accompanies the controller. So the 14R comes in 2 different flavors. You have the RTR, which is the one that you're seeing in the studio today, and there's also the RTO LiPo combo, which comes with the LiPo battery and the charger for the battery. Both options are still brushed. The overall length of this car is 12.99 inches, and the overall width is 6.81 inches. Here we are, guys, with the 14R out of the box. Let's break that final seal, which makes it our own. Get that off of there. Couple more on the body, and let's get all that masking off. And now we can see the body for all of its glory. I'll take that off, let you guys see it. We have a licensed Hoonicorn body with the licensed American Racing VF503 wheels. Hopefully that's coming up nice and clear in the camera. No light buckets on this one, unlike the bigger brother, the 10th scale. There are no light buckets on this. But something this small, I don't know if you're going to be running it at night. But it looks gorgeous, guys. Looks gorgeous. As you guys know, I'm an on-road junkie and a huge Hoonicorn fan, so had to get this in the collection. But for the most part, this is pretty much one unibody to it. We do have these bits that are screwed on down below. And then we have a diffuser coming off the rear, and that's also mounted underneath the shell. And then there is a wing that is mounted to the rear of the shell. These taillights too are also mounted to the shell, but the shell on a whole is just one piece. And then we have these little bits that are screwed onto it. Looks good, guys. Looks good. And then we have the chassis. And this chassis looks pretty solid. I mean, they did say this is an improved chassis. I'll bring my 14B up and we'll see what the two look like. But these tires, they do have foam in them. Compound feels fairly stiff, but they do have a little bit of give. This comes with injected molded brake calipers and rotors, and the hexes for these wheels are 12 millimeters. I'm noticing this car has brass bushings, at least by the wheels. I'm not sure if that's going to be throughout the entire RC. We'll take this front to back like we typically do. Nice foam bumper with some body mounts coming off of it. A lot of adjustments on our body mounts. We have a composite bulkhead composite shock tower, composite fixed links, composite shocks. They are oil filled, but they are adjusted by spacers. We have 2 adjustments for the shocks up top. Composite steering brace up in the front. The center drive shaft is sealed. Center drive shaft is aluminum. This car is running a center spool, and it's a 58 tooth spur. The differentials on this car are sealed. Composite universal drive shafts in the front, composite dog bones in the rear. The battery tray will hold your standard 14 scale and 16 scale batteries, and it is adjustable. The servo is D115F. It's a digital servo, and it does have a servo saver attached to it. We have a 3-channel receiver. Looking at the motor, we have a brush 390 size motor with a brush 2S and 3S capable ESC. We have Dean's connectors coming off of the ESC. For the rear, composite shock tower, several adjustments for the body mount, a composite brace for the shock tower, no adjustments on the support arms for the shocks, and it looks like we have 2 adjustments on the shock tower for the shock. Composite chassis throughout with some composite skid plates going on in the front and also in the rear. Looks like a solid kit, guys. I have seen UDRC run his with the nickel metal pack, and it was pretty quick. Go check out his video. I will leave a link for his video in the description below. But here we are, guys. 14R, 14B. This is a buggy. This also comes as a truggy. I don't believe there's any difference in the size and the makeup of the RC. It's just a truggy body that comes over and covers the shock tower in the front and gives you more of a truggy look as opposed to the buggy look. Wheelbase wise, these are pretty much the same RCs. I'm not seeing much difference between them in regards to the wheelbase. And there we are on width. You guys can see that the 14B is a wider vehicle compared to the 14R. So they're definitely using different suspension arms on the 14R to give you that narrower track width on the RC compared to the buggy and the truggy version of this RC. Just to give you guys another view of the overall wheelbase of the 2 cars, you can see they're spot on. They are the same wheelbase when it comes to size. So just taking off the shells, you guys can see that the 14B is a brushless RC. It is not brushed, but when you're looking at the chassis and everything else, looking at these 2 RCs, of course the front bumper we're seeing on the 14R is on there. Shock tower is definitely different between the 2. We got a taller shock tower on the 14B. Coming back, it looks like the steering brace is about the same, but we have adjustable links all throughout this RC on the 14B. There's also ability to add a sway bar on the 14B. I don't see that on the 14R. There doesn't seem to be anywhere to add sway bars on here. The Ackerman bar on the 14B is aluminum, composite on the 14R. The servo is the same between the 2. We have the D115F in both. Placements of the receiver box are the same, and the receiver is the same between the 2. As I mentioned before, the electronics, we got brushed in the 14R, brushless in the 14B. Some body mounts, of course, because that's a buggy body. The body mounts are different on the 14R versus the 14B. Shock tower in the rear, another thing that's different between the 2. Both composite, but just a taller shock tower on the 14B. The rear bracing on the shock tower between the 2 is also different. One thing that I'm noticing is that the coil-over shocks on the 14B are screw-down adjustable versus clips on the 14R. On the 14B, you have metal universals in the front, and there are metal dog bones in the rear. I'm noticing another difference between the 14B and the 14R. There are bearings in the 14B. Tires and wheels on the buggy are bigger, so that's why it stands up a lot higher than on the 14R. The chassis are also different between the 2. We have a more parallel or linear style chassis on the 14R. The 14B, it's typical to like a buggy. Starts off wide in the front and tapers in the rear. So there is noticeable differences between the 14B to 14R. It is not just a swap of the 14B and they came up with the 14R. This is definitely a revised version of this chassis lineup. We've done an unboxing of the 14R. We've done an overview of what the 14R comes out of the box. And we've done a comparisons between the 14R and the 14B. But what's next for the 14R? We're gonna stick a LiPo pack in this and get this thing out, do some hooning around. But we're gonna leave it here. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Check us out on Instagram and TikTok for the latest updates to the channel. This is Ready Set RC signing out. Thanks again, guys.